So here goes a weekend's worth of work compacted into 10.5 minutes. As you can see, my little stone border is not real straight. Every time it rains real hard at our house, these get moved around because our yard sits kind of low and it kind of gets a lot of water and the water pushes them around. So I got tired of it and I decided I was going to make them straight. And I was also going to put a little planter around the mailbox. So I cut it out with my weed eater edger. Took up all the grass. I'm going to use all this grass to fill a depression in our front yard. So I'm not going to waste this grass. And all the dirt that we're going to dig up in just a minute is going to go to fill in that depression. So this was about an hour's worth of work in about, 15, 20 seconds. I wish it would have been that easy. So here we're measuring the height of the stone to know how deep to set the concrete form that we're going to pour. And the stone was 4 inches, so I wanted to make it probably 3 inches above the grass. So my form board was 3.5 inches. So I had to make sure it was deep enough for the form board to not stick out after I poured the concrete. So I dug it all up, got it all nice and straight. Boy, this looks easy doing it on speed video, but it was a lot of work. There's all the dirt that we dug up. That filled in the depression, and now you're going to see the grass that I've moved in there. And in about a month or so, that'll all be grown in, and you won't even know it was there. So now I'm setting the forms for the concrete. This is probably the most important piece. You want to make sure you get it level. You can see I got my level there, and I put a mark on my stake. I'm going to put a screw right where that mark was, take my chalk line, wrap it around that screw, and I got another screw at the other end to hold it. Put a stake in the middle right on the chalk line, and then you pop the line to make sure you got it all level. You put a screw in your first end to get it started. You put a screw in the second end right where your chalk line was, and then you put a screw in the middle, and that form board is level. Then you go to the other side, put your stake in, and you want to make sure that this side is also level with the first side. So you take your level again, put it on your form board, put it on your stake, make a mark. There's a lot of bending over work, and the older I get, the further the ground seems to get from where I want to be. It seems like it's a lot more work getting up than it used to be. So you take your other stake, put it down at the other end. Again, you want to make sure it's level with your existing form board that you got in, that you know is level. And you'll see that here in just a second. There's the level. Put a mark on the form board. You can see the bubbles right in the middle. Put a mark on your form board, and then you can just do the same thing. Put a stake in the middle and screw that one off. Now this one, I've already got a stake at the other end with my chalk line on it. Put a screw in this end. Go to your middle stake. Put a screw in that one right on your chalk line. And then when you get to the end, I didn't put a stake at the end because I didn't know exactly where it was going to be. You put a stake, and you want to make sure you got enough room to screw this form board and the next form board in that one stake. So you want to split the difference. Again, you want to make sure everything's level, or it's going to look kind of goofy. So you put your screw in there, and then you put up your next form board. It's really not that hard. It's just kind of being meticulous. And if you're meticulous in the beginning, you don't have to worry about it at the end. This is a little trick that I learned to make sure your corner is square. I squared it up with a speed square so I know it's square, but if you'll measure 3 inches one way, 4 inches the other way, and then put your tape measure on that angle, it should be 5 inches. That's the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And it also works if you go 9 inches one way, 12 inches the other way, then your angle should be 15 inches. And that way you make sure you're square. I know it's square because I did it with a speed square already. But just a neat little trick to make sure you got it square. So now I'm putting up the other side. I won't bore you with the detail. It's all the same. You just keep going. And now I got my forms all squared up. You can see it's all 10 inches. The blocks were 8 inches wide. So I made the form where the stakes are 10 inches. And then you lose 1.5 inches because I was using 1x4s. And they're 3/4 of an inch. So if you go 10 inches and you lose 3/4 on each side, you're down to 8.5 inches, and the forms were 8 inches, or the blocks were 8 inches. So I put the first layer of concrete in. I didn't fill it all the way up. And this is some metal lath that I had that I cut into strips that I'm going to put down in the concrete to make it a little stronger. And just tap them down in there, make sure they're in there good. And then we're going to put the rest of the concrete on to make it all nice and flush with the top of the form board. And there's our family, our kids and grandkids, and September 2024's. So whoever lives in this house in 30 years, I did put 2 little drains in because of the water to get out of the driveway where I park, just so it doesn't overfill my driveway. It'll go out into the yard, because like I say, we get a lot of water in our front yard when it rains. The whole street drains down to our house. So there's all the forms. Now I got my 2 grandsons here helping me. We're taking off the form boards. It's the next morning, and when you start laying your blocks back, you want to start on the corner. You want your corner block right where you want it to be. You put your 2 on there because the corner isn't going to be square, so you're going to have to cut it. You put a mark right where you know you're going to the outside corner, so you put a mark on where you want the inside corner to be. You take your square or your tape measure if you can draw a straight line. You draw a straight line on there, and then you go from that straight line, which was about 2 inches, and you go to the outside corner, which you know is going to match up. Here I'm drawing the line to the outside corner, and do the same thing on the other side because the angle grinder won't cut all the way through it. This is the angle grinder, just going to cut it. You don't want to cut it all in one path. You want to keep going, just cut a little bit at a time. It's very dusty. You want to make sure you're wearing your safety goggles because it will spit out little rocks and dust and all kinds of stuff at you while you're cutting it. So you cut one side, flip it over, cut the other side the same way. And the angle grinder still wasn't quite enough to cut it all the way through, even from both sides. It was like a 1/2 inch short. So you just take a hammer and chip that little piece off. You don't want to hit it real hard because you don't want to break the existing block. So you just want to hit it just hard enough to knock it off. You might have to hit it 3 or 4 times to get it off, but it'll pop off. And then you just clean up that cut and you put it down there, and it should match up just right. See, so we got that piece in. And you always want to start on your corner because that's pretty much where you start any kind of construction, is on the corner. And here's the other piece going the other way. Once again, we chipped it off and cleaned it off. And then basically you just line them up down the run. And you can go right off to your concrete that you poured because you know it's straight and level. Here I'm just lining them up down Down the run, I got my other corner already cut. And this is what the finished product looked like after it was all pressure cleaned, and it all looks good. You can see just how straight it is, much better. The water's not gonna push it out of the way. We got our garden ready. You can't see it real good, but we put some flowers in there and put a different color rock in there to kind of separate it. But that's the finished product.